He is saying adultery isn't about what you do. It's about what you dwell on. It's not about what you do out here. It's about what you dwell on in your heart. In the biblical language, the word heart it's your inner life. It's your inner thoughts. It's your inner desires. And whatever you make the top of your inner desires in your inner life, that's your God. You have heard that it was said to the people long ago, you shall not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. And everyone says, that's right, murder is wrong. But I tell you, but wait, there's more, that anyone who is angry with his brother or sister will be subject to judgment. You see, for Jesus, you can murder someone and publicly declare your life has no value, or you can look down on someone. You can harbor anger towards someone. You can have contempt against someone. You can label people. You can call them names and declare that their lives have no value. So the point we learned last week, the wisdom beneath it is that contempt is a killer. Get rid of it. Deal with it. Eliminate it from your heart. Today, we're going to look at the next of the antitheses. We're going to look at the next statement that Jesus made about committing adultery. And more importantly, we're going to learn to see God's wisdom behind this commandment. Now, I know that we live in a day and age where as soon as someone like me stands on a stage and opens up the Bible and says, the Bible says, I totally get it that there is an intuitive resistance and a crossed-arm nature to whatever it says, because in our culture, people assume that the biblical view, that Jesus' view of sex and of sexual desire is restrictive, it's oppressive, it's backwards, and so there is already built-in resistance to it. And if that's you, would you at least be honest enough to assess and evaluate how, in general, we're doing with it in culture today? How are we doing with our approach to sexuality in culture today? How are we doing with our approach to sexual desire in our culture today? We all know that since the advent of the internet and the invention of the iPhone, that mental health has suffered. You might not realize that several studies have shown there is a high correlation between frequent pornography consumption on the internet and poor mental health. It's not leading us to a good mental state. Furthermore, we also know from studies that pornography can lead to addictive behavior, much like a drug. It hijacks the brain's dopamine system and the reward system, causing frequent viewers to seek more and more of the substance. Not only that, it's not helping humanity flourish in our inner lives either. Now, for those of us who are Christians, if pornography is part of your lifestyle, if it's part of your consumption, it disrupts prayer, it disrupts worship, it disrupts vulnerability and connection with one another. But even secular people report feelings of shame, feelings of anxiety after viewing pornography. I mean, so much of our sexuality, when it contradicts what the biblical authors say, even when a person's secular and doesn't believe any of it, will still report feelings of shame or guilt associated with our sexual past. Not only that, it's doing great damage culturally. Pornography teaches us to objectify people, to see them as objects, not as humans, to see them as things to conquer, things to possess, things to desire, mere objects rather than humans made in God's image. And not only that, studies are also very clear that pornography consumption and the volume of it is deeply connected with human trafficking on our planet today. Our current approach to all things related to sexual desire is not working well for you, for your children, your grandchildren, or culture at large. And what I'm going to show you today is that the vision Jesus has for sexual desire in our culture is one of the most attractive things about Christianity. And what I want you to know from the get-go is that what we find today in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus did not say it, he did not speak it, he did not teach it in order for you to feel ashamed. He said it so that you could become free. He said it so you could flourish. He said it so you could live the good life. So if you will orient our time around that, this is an invitation from Jesus into freedom, into flourishing, into the good life. It's going to help you really lean into and see what he has to share with us today. So today, we're in Matthew chapter 5, verse 27. You have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. Now, before we even get to the but wait, there's more, we're going to have to spend some time here unpacking why this was one of the 10 commandments to begin with. When Jesus spoke this, the 10 commandments had already been around for over 1,000 years. And everyone in his first century audience agreed, that's right, you should not commit adultery. And pretty much everybody of all time, of any culture, would agree with that statement. If someone else is married, hands off. They're married. If you're married, that means spousal sex is the only appropriate form of sex. I'm off limits now if I got married. So Jesus said, you shall not commit adultery, and pretty much everyone of all times, at least philosophically, agrees with the statement that's right. Now, this commandment is rooted in a biblical principle. Now, I'm just going to state the biblical principle up front, then I'm going to unpack it for you. The principle is sex only within a covenant relationship. The principle is that sex is not for consenting people. Sex is for married people. Because marriage is the unique and one and only human relationship that is what we call a covenant relationship. Now, I know that's not a word that we use these days, but I'm still choosing to use it because it communicates critical aspects of what the relationship is. On the one hand, it is absolutely legal and it is a legal contract, but on the other hand, it is also a personal commitment. A commitment to trustworthiness, a commitment to responsibility, a commitment to faithfulness, a commitment to loyalty. And therefore, what we have in a covenant is a very unique kind of relationship. A covenant is more intimate than a legal relationship, and it is more enduring than an emotional relationship, okay? It's more intimate than a legal relationship. You have some legal relationships with your cell phone carrier, probably not intimate. With your mortgage holder, probably not intimate. In fact, if you have any emotional connection to the people you are in a contract with, it's probably not love. It's probably not happiness and fulfillment. So it's more intimate than a legal relationship, but at the same time, it's more enduring than a mere emotional relationship. It has permanence to it. And this is why it is critical for the marriage, because if we approach marriage as if it is a consumer or a contractual only relationship, then we will lose interest and we will lose love as soon as we're no longer feeling it. You see, you have consumer relationships with all kinds of vendors in the world. As long as they provide good service at a good price in a reasonable amount of time with friendly customer service, you'll continue to shop there, but you're under no obligation to continue to shop there. But covenants have permanence to them. Here's the difference. A consumer mindset says, my wants are more important than the relationship. My wants, my desires, what I want, that's more important than the relationship itself. But a covenant is the opposite. The relationship is more important than my wants. Which is not to say your wants are unimportant. It is not to say your desires are unimportant. We're talking about priority. And the priority in a covenant is the relationship is more important in rank order than my desires. Consumers say my desires and wants are more important than the relationship. And if anyone enters marriage, even if it's only one of the two people enter marriage with a consumer mindset, it is going to be at best, exploitative, immature, and love will get squeezed out because one of the people is prioritizing their desires over the relationship. But when two people come together and say, I'm prioritizing us more than my wants, Yes, I have wants and desires, but I am prioritizing us. I am submitting to you out of reverence for Christ. When two people do that, you will find a marriage relationship that is filled with joy and satisfaction, and most importantly, deep and abiding love. Now, the relationship that comes closest to this, yet is not a covenant, is a parent-child relationship. If you have had children, you understand something. You give and 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 you give, and then 2 months in, they give you a little smile. And you continue to give and give and give. And as they get older, they can start to give something back, but you know it is never going to ever balance out. Yet how do you feel about them? Even when they drive you crazy, there's still love there because you're committed to the relationship. In the same way, in a covenant relationship, when two people have that kind of commitment, I am going to love, I am going to serve, I am going to honor you. The feeling of love is always, always, always following behind that. Now, within the marriage covenant, there is a way that God designed for humans to deepen that marriage covenant, that covenant relationship, and it is the gift of sex. God designed us, male and female, with sexed bodies as sexual creatures, and the purpose of sex and the reason why it is for the marriage covenant is because it is an outward sign and symbol of what has already taken place. I will be vulnerable and naked with you because I have given my whole life to you. You see, the principle is this: sex is not a consumer good, it's a covenant good. And to take it out of the covenant relationship is to exploit another person. I'm not willing to give you my whole life. I just want pleasure from you. I'm not willing to fully commit my whole life legally, emotionally, permanently to you. I just want something from you. When you take sex out of the marriage relationship and make it a consumer good, then the purpose of sex is to keep someone interested in the relationship. But within the covenant relationship, sex becomes a reenacting of your marriage vows. It is to again say, I give myself completely, vulnerably, and totally to you. That's the reason why the biblical sex ethic is no sex outside of the covenant. To do so is hypocrisy. It is to give yourself to one physically without giving yourself to one fully. It's not a consumer good, it's a covenant good. Therefore, the commandment, you shall not commit adultery. And in that audience, it made sense to everyone. But wait, there's more. But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Now, I want to unpack a couple critical words here so we understand what this meant to Jesus and what it meant to his original audience. First, with the word looks. That word is not a quick glance. That word means to continue to look, to watch, to gaze, to stare at someone, which any woman will tell you is weird and gross and creepy. Quit being a pervert. I'm serious. That's what this word is getting at. It is to just stare someone down. Whoever looks at someone, and then the word lustfully. Now, I understand in context, this is a great translation. But because in English, this word always has a sexual connotation to it, not in the Greek language. We need context to know how to translate this word because it's a very neutral word that can be used positively or negatively without any sexual connotation whatsoever. For example, this same word is used in Luke chapter 22 by Jesus. He told his disciples, I have eagerly desired, I have lustfully looked forward to eating this Passover with you. So in that context, it's just a word of, I've really been looking forward to this. I have been anticipating this. It has been on my heart and mind. This is going to be so important. Or in a negative context, Paul in Galatians chapter 5 talks about a tension between the spirit and the flesh. The flesh is the sinful operating system in our hearts that's incredibly selfish. And he says the spirit and the flesh are at odds. The flesh desires what is contrary to the spirit. So in that sense, the word lust or desires is about idolatry or coveting. It wants selfish things, not godly things. So if we were to translate this verse a little more literally into what his audience heard, it might go like this. This is just my translation. Anyone who looks at a woman to covet her or fantasize about her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Now, let me tell you what Jesus is not saying here. He is not saying that sexual desire is bad or wrong. Again, God created us as sexed beings, male and female. He made us with the anatomy to engage in sexual activity. That was part of the plan. Not only that, the biblical authors had an incredibly high view of sexuality. In fact, you might not believe this, but I could pull out verses in the Bible and read them to you today, and it would make 21st century Americans blush. I could pull out verses in the Bible and read them to you today, and then I would get emails this afternoon saying, Jason, that was inappropriate to read the Bible in church. So I'll give you a couple very general PG examples. In Genesis chapter 2, the human race begins with a naked man singing a love song to a naked woman. The book of the Song of Solomon is filled with very graphic descriptions of lovers. In Proverbs chapter 5, we're told that a husband should be enthralled by and captivated by his wife's breasts. You know, sometimes people ask me, Jason, are you one of those fundamentalists who takes the Bible literally? Yes, I am. And Jesus had a worldview that was deeply informed by the Hebrew Scriptures, which praised human sexuality. So he's not disparaging the fact that we are sexual creatures or that we have sexual desire. What is he condemning here? What is the wisdom he is getting at beneath the commandment to not commit adultery? Here's what we see. He is saying adultery isn't about what you do. It's about what you dwell on. It's not about what you do out here. It's about what you dwell on in your heart. In the biblical language, the word heart it's your inner life. It's your inner thoughts. It's your inner desires. And whatever you make the top of your inner desires in your inner life, that's your God. That's what you worship. And whatever you dwell on, whatever you focus on, whatever you gaze on, it moves up the priorities of your heart.